We cover what kind of brushes are used for a specific weathering technique, as well as move the Wayzata Depot project forward, and we detail up a pretty simple white van. And we cover all this on this episode of the GN in 1970.
70s.
Here's a question one of our fellow modelers, Stephen Kuhn, had asked, what brush am I using when I do this louver technique in terms of weathering? Well, it's a worn-out brush that I normally would have for just traditional weathering, and it's gotten so beat up and worn out that I'm able to use it for this process. Now, they're just cheap brushes. There's nothing expensive about them at all. It's a small multi-pack that you can pick up at your local big box store. Now, as you see there in the middle, that's how they flare out when I'm using it just for regular weathering. And if you just want to jump right to the style I've got, you can trim off the end of the actual brush by simply just clipping off the bristles.
Wait for it. Keep waiting.
And now I'll just trim this up. We'll get it cleaned up so I've got this short, bristled, very stiff brush that I'm able to use when I'm doing that type of weathering. I'll take a look at the 1500s at idles with those nice louvers, and we'll move on to the next task. All right, here we are at the Wayzata Depot. One of the things I've been trying to do is figure out what color is that trim. You go to a more modern photo and you find out it's brown and white. You go back to an old black and white photo and you find out, well, it's black and white. Well, it's actually brown and white or brown and cream. But as I look back on a lot of this history, I figured the only way to find the real answer was go down to the depot itself and find out what exactly I'm looking at and see if there's any information I can find there. And for anybody that's not familiar with the Wayzata Depot, it originally opened in 1906. It is on the Great Northern Wilmer sub, so it's cool to be able to go back in time like this and check out a facility and see exactly what they might have seen about 100 years ago. Now, granted, yeah, a lot of the photographs and all the other stuff aren't there, but a lot of original pieces like the light fixtures that are above, as well as some of the flooring, including the benches. Now, my son's looking for some gum underneath there, but I'm guessing it's not original. But the subway tile that goes around the perimeter of the depot itself, including the floor. The floor is a terrazzo floor with granite inlays. It's a nice little detail to add, so I ended up measuring it out to get the exact size of the floor.
I mean, seriously, how often do you really look at a man's shoes?
I then scanned the actual wood floor from the kit, laid out a floor of my own in Photoshop to be able to lay into the actual building to give myself that look of the terrazzo floor. So now that I've kind of looked at the interior, I'm focusing my attention back to the exterior, trying to figure out what color is that trim at this point. I find this shot from 1965, and that lady standing there looking around the corner is probably wondering the same thing. Is that trim brown? Is that trim green? What color is it? Well, as the Western Star comes blasting past here, I end up going back to the books. And this Scott Thompson book, which is actually volume 3, The Great Northern Equipment, I know you get tired of me mentioning it, but one of the best books I've had out there for research. It showed this on the back cover. That's right, my friends. It's an NW5 pulling that X181. That's the Hutch Local in front of the Wayzata Depot. I'm getting closer on my color combinations. I end up pulling up these reference sheets. My dad is a member of the Historical Society, and he says, I've got these particular pieces. You want to take a look? 1965 to 1970 is perfect. There's actually 2 of them here. This other one is in a reference to the actual exterior structures and their colors. Here's the mind bender. Boom! The color charge. This got us way closer than we had ever been. I end up getting a color match almost perfect to the medium green. This particular case, I've got Tamiya light green Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force from World War II. Well, anybody that's building model aviation these days, they need their paint. Tamiya green is going to be the one that they're going to go with, and I'm going to use it on depot trim. Now that I've got my green determined, I'm going to move on to the other colors. Here I always use is flat white primer. I'm going to put this on all pieces that are going to get any color, whether it's white or green. Here are the pieces as they are. Some are green, some are white. I'll sort those out as the time comes. But first I'm going to address the wood floor. I use Minwax wood finish. This is Golden Pecan, number 245. It ends up being a nice, soft, light color. It's not overly aggressive and too dark. So I've got the floor itself done. I'm going to move on to the actual interior walls. As I mentioned before, I end up priming it, but before I do, I test fit everything. Test fit, test fit, test fit. I can't stress that enough. I always test fit all the components to make sure they fit together nice and I'm not putting them in the wrong place. As I mentioned, I end up priming these. I put the primer on, I do 2 or 3 coats, and again, I test fit it again. I end up going to the actual exterior as well. None of these pieces have been glued together or cut out. I just test fit to make sure that the pieces are working and sitting where they're supposed to be. And now that I got them where they're supposed to be, I end up sticking down the actual trim pieces on the exterior. So I've not used any glue at this point. This entire kit so far, I've actually just gone through and test fit all the components to make sure everything is going where it's supposed to, including the terrazzo floor. Now I printed this on a 100-pound cover stock, which is just kind of a heavyweight paper. It's not card stock. It's a little bit lighter than that, but it's not as light as printer paper. So this has been test fit. I don't think I'm going to even glue it in. I'm going to let the walls hold it down as well as the exterior. So I end up getting everything kind of put together and in place. And again, test fitting to make sure things fit. Just dropped in a few of these. I think these are lifelike or model power benches to be able to see how things fit into the space and how we're going to be able to work with it moving forward. All right, two plain white vans that aren't 1970. What we're actually looking at here are antique archaeology. It's from the show American Pickers on the History Channel. You'll see where I'm going with this down the road. But these particular vans, I'm just taking a plain, simple white van and turning it into something more unique. Now, as you see here, I've got the decals. I'm going to turn them out to size. I'm going to throw them into the water, and then we're going to work on applying them to the van itself. Hey, we've been here before. Liquid chrome. Yeah, I use it again. I end up using a toothpick. I just put a little bit of it on the tip to be able to do fine details like this here Mercedes logo. It originally was silver, but it had worn off from the previous user. I don't know if it was just from handling it or what, but I'm reapplying it here, and you get that same chrome effect by being able to apply it just with a toothpick. And you can do this with door handles. Sometimes you'll have to do the mirrors on the side, and occasionally I'll even use it on the trim that goes around the perimeter of either doors or windows. Here's one detail I think everybody should add to their 187 scale vehicles. License plates. Really simple. 2 decals. Not that difficult. And when it really comes down to it, if somebody comes to your railroad and says, "Isn't this supposed to be Texas? Those license plates are from Maine." Tell them it's a rental car and they can go pound sand. This is a simple process. Snip off 2 license plates, apply one to the front, one to the back, and you've added just a very subtle detail. It's going to add a lot more character to the vehicles that you have on your railroad. All right, where do the details end? It's like remodeling your house. You do one room, the next thing you know, you've done the entire floor. What we've got here is actually headlights. I popped them out. I've got Milwaukee Road orange. I'm going to put a little bit into the recesses of the actual car itself, and then I'll pop the headlights back in to give an indication that there are actually turn signals on the vehicle.
Probably best not to tell anyone about this.
Right, no one. I mean, I'll tell myself sometimes, but don't worry, I won't believe it.
All right, the only hiccup I really ran into thus far on the assembly of the Wayzata Depot is actually where the bay window slit. You can see it right there. It doesn't line up. Since I haven't glued anything together, the resolve is going to be pretty easy. You see all the ceiling sections? You can set ceiling on each piece. I just flip one piece over, which is going to be the large main section. I popped it off. I'm just going to flip it over and then line it back into place. Now that it's back in place, I can drop the roof back on top of the depot, and I've got the problem resolved. Here it's time to move on to painting, and what I'm using here is Rust-Oleum. This is Blossom White. It's actually a satin finish. I'm going to give it 2 coats to be able to make sure I get a nice even consistency across the board. I've done the doors as well, and I'm actually masking them off now, preparing them to be painted green. Now what I do to be able to mask them off like that is I take a piece of masking tape, I lay it over the entire piece, and you can see I've actually used my nail to be able to divide and find an area exactly where the actual door is ending and starting. So you can see the casing around each of the doors. So I'll end up taking a very sharp X-Acto knife and going along here and cutting out each of those pieces.
You got a problem with that?
Oh, no.
And we'll move along with this particular process on all the doors and actual casing around the openings that are on the interior. And then from here, we're going to be able to move forward and get them all painted up green. I did mask the men's and women's plates that go on the bathroom doors just so when I peel the tape off, they'll be white. All right, so I shot up the green on the trim and all the other portions that I think are going to be green on the particular depot. I don't have the windows and doors installed just yet. Obviously, that's going to be the next step that's going to be coming up. But again, Test fitting. Just test fitting to make sure everything fits and everything is going to be sitting right where I want it. And as I move forward here, I'm going to disassemble the entire depot and start putting the windows in. So that's where we'll leave the depot project at this moment. It's going along really well, and hopefully you're enjoying this process. All right, are you the GOAT? When was this GN depot captured in this aqua color? Was it A, 1964, B, 1969, C, 1972, or D, 1980? If you guessed 1969, you are the greatest of all time.
You got a problem with that?
All right, as you can see here, we took this plain model power Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van and turned it into something a little bit more unique by simply adding a few decals and ended up snapping this up to a point that we're going to have kind of a cool little scene to be able to set up on the railroad. Now, this isn't 1970s, but it's going to lead to something that is. As you can see here, there's a Flexi Van trailer sign that came from the Milwaukee Road. Mike and Frank are picking up a few other things like that classic Vespa. As we move things forward, we're going to look forward to future episodes, so hopefully you enjoyed this one of the GN in 1970. Take care.
70s.
We really enjoyed creating these episodes of the GN in 1970 as well as Sue the Milwaukee Road. The only way we know if you guys like these is hit that like button. You can hit it, click it, smash it, whatever it is that you're into. You can hit the subscribe button if you want to see on future episodes. Just make sure you ring that bell. And if you want to see more of the Great Northern, you can take a tour of the GN in 1970, which covers the HO scale Wilmer subdivision. You can also check out other episodes that I've done of Sue the Milwaukee Road that covers the 1985 merger of the Soo Line and Milwaukee Road in HO scale. Thanks a lot for watching.